Hello and welcome to this special bonus episode of the Huron Chamber Connect podcast. On October 2nd, 2025, the Huron Chamber of Commerce and the Goderich Port Management Corporation welcomed business leaders from across Huron County and across the Great Lakes marine shipping industry to the Port of Goderich to discuss the strategic importance of our Great Lakes ports, in particular the Port of Goderich, and especially in light of the planned expansion of the Port of Goderich. So we now present in 4 episodes the panel discussions, the presentations, and keynote address from the Huron Marine and Economic Forum. In this episode, the next voice you hear will be Mayor of Goderich, Trevor Bazinet, followed by the President of the Goderich Port Management Corporation, Frank Hurkmans.
The story of the Port of Goderich is a story of our community. The Port of Goderich was established in 1827, so that was around the last time that the Toronto Maple Leafs won the Stanley Cup, by John Galt and William Tiger Dunlop. From the very beginning, settlers were drawn to this place because it is a natural harbor, a safe and vital gateway on the shores of Lake Huron. What started with the small trading vessels and fishing boats soon became a thriving commerce hub. By the mid-1800s, around the time Toronto Maple Leafs last won the Stanley Cup, as farms and communities spread across Huron County, our port became the lifeline that carried grain, lumber, and goods to markets nearby. In 1858, with the arrival of the Lake Huron Railway, Goderich was firmly established as a center of trade and opportunity. The defining moment came in 1866, when salt was discovered beneath our feet. That discovery forever changed the future of Goderich. What began as a single well grew into an industry that continues to this day with Compass Minerals, home to the largest underground salt mine in the world. And that's something that anyone that lives in the town of Goderich should always talk about. We have the world's largest underground salt mine, something to be proud about, something to advocate for. For generations, salt, along with grain and aggregates, have flowed out of our harbor to communities across Great Lakes and beyond. Another historic turning point came in 1999, when the town of Goderich proudly took ownership of the port from the Government of Canada. This transfer was completed at no cost to our local taxpayers. Instead, a unique model was created, the Goderich Port Management Corporation. A not-for-profit was established to operate the harbor on behalf of the town. Rather than relying on taxes, the port is funded through user fees paid by the very industries that use it. Those funds are reinvested directly into our harbor, into breakwalls, piers, river walls, and expansion projects. Keeping the port self-sustaining and strong, that forward-thinking decision set the stage for decades of growth and stability. I want to take the time now to recognize Mr. Larry McKay, former CEO of the town of Goderich. Larry was very instrumental in this process and getting the port to the town of Goderich, where it belongs. So I'd like to just everyone give a round of applause to Larry. I mean, we'll have our little coffee breaks and stuff like that. He's the history book behind this. He's the most knowledgeable person, no offense, Frank, in regards to what the history of this port and the work that he did as the CEO of the town of Goderich to get us where we are today. He deserves, that credit. I felt it was necessary to recognize Larry here today. He's still a board member. He's still passionate about our port. He's still involved in this town. And usually when people retire, they just push everything aside and go on to their other life that they want to live, the next chapter. Larry's still involved highly, especially with the sport. So thank you, Larry McKay. The Port of Goderich is more than an industry, though. It is a place for work and prosperity, but also of recreation, tourism, and beauty. You will not see a better sunset in the world than right here. You can actually, if you're fast enough, see it twice. Run up the hill, stay down here, run up, and you can see it twice. And that's not a joke, it's true. I've done it. I almost killed myself doing it. I was out of breath, but I did it. Our commercial fishing heritage and our marina and our waterfront boardwalk have all brought life and energy to this special place, even in the face of challenges, including the 2011 tornado. We have rebuilt stronger, showing the resilience that defines Goderich. Can we improve on what we have? 100% we can. We talk about expansion, and that is a priority that needs to happen. But we also need to tell the story of the industry at the port and the history of the port. There is no better location than our 1.8 kilometer stretch of boardwalk that thousands upon thousands of people walk, enjoy. You see some of the signage that we have if you have ever enjoyed our boardwalk, and you've added 4 new signs in regards to the heritage of the town. And what I've pushed forward in Syed, we've had conversations, and I've talked to Daryl Markle from P&H as well. You know, I'll sit on the patio here in the summertime and have dinner with my family. And I've heard people that are not from the area say, well, what's that building over there, right? So I butt into the conversation and I make them aware that's the world's largest salt line. You actually have to go underneath Lake Huron, 1,867 feet, 27 feet, whatever it is, right? And there's quite a few people that work under this lake and make good money doing it. And that changes their tune. Like their eyes light up and they're like, so they want to know more. I think we have an opportunity here and we need to take advantage of that opportunity. And you know, if you drive down here or you walk down the boardwalk, right now, if you go to the Cove Arches and you go towards the Cove, there's 5 signs that are the same sign. We don't need to have 5 of the same sign. What we need to do is start talking about what we have here down in our port and sharing that with our tourists. And that needs to happen. And I know Compass Minerals is putting something together for us. And I know Parrish and Heimbecker is, but I also would like to see something from Tomlinson. And I would also like to see something from Daly as well. Tell the story. That's how we make people aware of what is happening here. A lot of people come down here, they have no idea what's going on. That needs to change. And that's something that I want to work towards with our industries that are down here to get done. I want to also say the potential of our waterfront, it's anything can happen right here. If you can pick up the building that we're sitting in right now, which is an old train station, which used to be over there, and move it 500 feet closer to the lake, then anything can happen. And we always have to have that mindset. We have to be relentless. I was talking to a good friend the other day, and she made me aware that near Bazinet, you're the most relentless person I know. And we have to continue to be relentless. We need to advocate for cruise ships, but we need to be smart on our approach. If we're having a cruise ship come to our port, we need to make sure that there's something going on in the town of Goderich for people to enjoy. We have local businesses here that we want people to be here and shop, but we also have great festivals here in the town of Goderich. The Celtic Festival, as an example, the Salt and Harvest Festival. We just celebrated 3 years of our Salt and Harvest Festival, and it was the biggest one yet. Thousands of people were here. Syed, you had the mine experience on the square. 500 people go through that thing in a 3-hour span, right? Like, people are interested in what's going on. 1,000. There you go, right? So there is an interest. You could probably open up a store in this town and sell swag with Compass Minerals on it, to be quite honest with you, right? You really could. People are that interested. I can see John there going, yes, right? Yeah, you're cheering for the Yankees tonight, right, John? We need to advocate and educate our youth on the amazing careers here in the marine industry. I see Janet. We had a great meeting a couple weeks ago, and some of the programs that you can provide, Sea Cadets being one, that's something that we need to work towards. Dave Shorey from Georgian College, you'll hear him later. We had the opportunity, and I want to thank Jay Fretz and his team at Parrish and Heimbecker for paying for the bus. Once again, I'm relentless. I said you need to pay for this bus so we can take 40 high school students up to Georgian College to see the Marine campus and providing that opportunity. And one of the cool things about Georgian College and Owen Sound is they have a Marine simulator. What of an experience, and they actually have the Port of Goderich as their simulator. So you're driving a vessel right into the Port of Goderich. Janice and I had the opportunity to do that, and it was, I would call it a lifetime experience, something that I'll always remember, right? And I appreciate our relationship, Dave, and working together. And, we talked about this before. Colin brought it up with Jessica and the work that she does at the Nuclear Innovation Institute. And I appreciate our friendship as well, Jessica, and working together. You do a lot of wonderful things for our youth. But we don't need to be so focused on what is happening here. We need to build relationships outside our own municipality to get things done and learn from each other and help each other out. So at the end of the day, we all want to be successful, no matter what community you live in, no matter what county you live in. It's about working together. And I appreciate building those relationships because I've learned so much from the both of you. And I'm happy that you're here today because the port is one of the most important things that we have working towards here moving forward with the expansion, and we can definitely use both of your help. So today as the only deep water port on the Canadian side of Lake Huron, our harbor remains an anchor for our economy and symbol of our identity. It connects us to the world, supports our families, and reminds us of the strength and vision of those who came before us. The history of our port is the history of perseverance, growth, and pride. And as we look into the future, I know the Port of Goderich will continue to be the beacon guiding opportunity of our shores and reminding us that we truly are Canada's prettiest town. You know, I want to thank Syed from Compass Minerals for being here, Jay from Harris and Heimbecker, Travis from Daly. I want to thank Christina from Tomlinson for the continued partnership with the town of Goderich. I'd also like to thank Colin Carmichael and his team from the Huron Chamber of Commerce for organizing this amazing opportunity that we have here in front of us. And now I have the honor of introducing our Goderich Port Management Corporation president. I don't have any notes in front of me regarding who Frank is. I think we all know who Frank is, but I do have a short story that I do want to share with Frank. One of the, you know, I've met Frank several times before he took over his position as the president with Tomlinson, and he sat in council chambers, and there was some good debates in regards to how we move forward with Tomlinson down at our port. And God rest his soul, Jim Donnelly was you know, he was always ready for a good debate, right, Mr. McCabe? Yeah, very good. Yeah, but when we did the interview process, which I sat in on as part of the interview, being part of the board, you know, we had the opportunity to interview numerous individuals, and Frank comes into the port office, and anyone that knows Frank, you can hear him. He's got a loud voice. He's a presence, right? And he walks into the port office. Hello, everyone. He says, takes off his suit jacket, puts it on the back of the chair, goes ahead and makes himself a coffee. Before we even started the interview, I'm like, he's been here before. So it was a wonderful interview, and the right choice was made. We appreciate the hard work that you do for the port, and we know you will continue to advocate on behalf of the town of Goderich and the Goderich Port Management Corporation. So everyone, please give a round of applause for Frank Masouts.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Is this on still? Yeah.
You don't need it, Frank.
So if we could have this HDMI table up here. Trevor, there is, respectfully, Trevor and I did not compare notes before we had the opportunity to come to this meeting today. So obviously there are some items that you're going to learn twice. And Steve Pigorian, by the way.
Please.
So as we get this set up, I thought very valuable for me to take the opportunity and introduce myself to the group. There's, I'm going to say, maybe 50% of the group that knows who I am, and maybe 50% of the group that's wondering who I am. So my name's Frank Hurkmans. I am the current president of Port, the Goderich Port Management Corporation. A little bit of background about myself and where I'm from. I have 25 years experience on the Great Lakes, essentially, plus or minus. That experience comes through ports on both sides of the border. It comes through vessels. It comes through docks. It comes through cargoes. So essentially, that 25 years has kind of built up the experience, if you will, for me to be able to have this role today and speak to you today. I'm a lifelong Shores of Lake Huron resident, born and raised. My wife and I currently live just south of Kettle Point on the lake, and I have a sister in Kippen, I have family in Grand Bend, so up and down the Lake Huron shoreline, we are well connected with, I would say. And then, water baby or boat baby my whole life. We lived there in close proximity. There are 3 kids, and more importantly, there are 5 grandkids, and have no intentions of leaving there at this point, and would really prefer to continue to grow what it is that we have happening here in the Port of Goderich. I will say again that there are going to be some repetitive topics real quick, just based on the carryover from the mayor's notes. I think in order for us, what I'd really like to illustrate here today, to get a full picture of the Port of Goderich from my perspective, is understanding what the past of the port is, how the port ended up being what the port is today. We'll talk a little bit about the present position of the port, and then we'll talk a little bit about what my vision is in regards to the growth of the port. And at the end of that, obviously, there's going to be a portion of that we're going to speak to that is quite common in just about any growth exercise that you have. There's always consequences to that growth. And we'll talk a little bit about that and understand, does the consequence outweigh, or does the benefit outweigh the consequence in any type of growth experience that we're going to go through at port. So I'm working from 2 monitors here, and anybody that knows my IT skills will, the over-under is probably pretty high that this is not going to work. So anybody that was at the hospitality event last night at Ben Miller, thanks very much for coming out. It was a great icebreaker to meet some of you there, to say hello. There is a good contingent that I had not had the opportunity to meet before. I can tell you that I'm a very transparent individual. The coffee, one of the lines that I use for the Port of Goderich is that the coffee pot's always on. And anybody is more than welcome to come on down there, say hello, wonder what's going on, and from a transparency perspective, we'll share all that I can with you. Organizers and sponsors have been recognized already, and that's great. So we'll go through some of the pictures, and if you actually are interested in taking a look at the screen, you might want to position yourself to a spot that you can see it, because some of the reference points will be a couple videos, etc., that you might want to be able to see the screen. So the notes that I have is essentially the Port of Goderich is 150 years old. It was 1872 to 1875-ish. And I'm not, don't hold me to this. There's a disclaimer on the information that may or may not be absolutely accurate. So in 1872, approval was granted to have the Maitland River diverted for 24 acres of the harbor to be created. So essentially the west wall of the Maitland River was created, which when that was built, that turned the river around the corner, which then created the harbor, as I understand it. From 1885 to 1911, port improvements continued to take place to accommodate docks for the lumber industry and shipbuilding. Now, you take a look at this picture in particular. Obviously, it's during the winter months, before the salt mine was there. We're not sure if the storage tanks, if the fuel tanks were there or not. One thing I can say is that that picture on the left-hand side, and I'll talk to you a little bit more, but I believe shipbuilding took place there in the early 1900s. So a bit of an interesting concept. And the reason that I think this is relatable is that as we work our way through the story, you're going to take a look at what's happened here in the last 150 years to get us to where we are today. From about the 1970s through to the 1960s, over 100 vessels were actually built in the harbor. Our first grain elevator, which you can just see to the left edge of this picture of a full harbor, obviously, and again pre-salt mine buildings down at the port. There was 100 vessels were built in the harbor. First grain elevator, unfortunately, built in the 1870s, burned, and the current elevator was constructed in the 20s, and some of that infrastructure still exists today. So when you start thinking about, okay, everything looks great above the water, what's equally as important for us to understand in port operations is the structural stability and integrity of everything that's under the water. Because again, when you start talking about some of the dates that we're reflecting to here now, some of this infrastructure and cribbing and that goes back to 1920, sorry. Trevor talked about this a little bit, but they had already found oil in about 1870 plus or minus in southwestern Ontario. In Oil City, I believe, is the name of the town. There was obviously a sense that, hey, look at, if they found oil here in Oil Springs, Ontario, why wouldn't there be oil in Goderich? Start drilling for oil, and some of the purest brine in North America ended up coming up on a continuous basis as opposed to oil. And so from that, I understand that the Canada Company was formed by John Galt and Tiger Dunlop to drill for oil. No luck again. They have started a brining operation that produced 100 barrels per day of the purest brine, as I stated earlier, but they couldn't keep the water from Lake Huron out of it. So that thing did not last very long. In the era of the late 1800s, through early 1900s, the Port of Goderich was a conduit to economic growth and financial success. So there was lumber trade that was taking place in the port at that time. There was shipbuilding taking place in the port at that time. A little bit later on, there was petroleum storage. I think it was Esso or Imperial Oil had a tank facility here at the port. Grain was always an important part, and then as the salt mine became more developed commercially, obviously salt became an important part of the mine, or of the port, sorry. So an interesting part about the town of Goderich itself is that the way I understand it, I look back through and learning for this presentation, is that if you wanted access to the town of Goderich at one time, you had to come in through the port, because anything to lead uptown, pre-roads and the rest of it, everything was connected through the port. So if you had business to do in the town, you had to come in by boat, et cetera, et cetera. So when we think about the vital importance of the Port of Goderich, that goes back into, the early 1900s, that it was that critical for this asset to be in place for the success of the town of Goderich. Interesting story that I found out about as well as I was doing some research, in November 9th, 1913, there was a storm that took place in Lake Huron, and they called it the Great Storm at that time. And mariners called it actually a white hurricane. And this white hurricane took close to 260 lives back then, and 19 ships were stranded or sunk. Folklore has it that seas in Lake Huron were anywhere from 35 to 45 feet high. Now, if you take a local mariner that's got 15 to 20 feet of water out there, they're concerned and looking for a safe harbor. So it was an incredible storm that happened at that time. And the reason I mention it is it's all part and parcel to what has happened over 150 years here at the Port of Goderich. The lighthouse continues to be a silent reminder of the navigation benefit the lake that it provided to seafarers approaching the Port of Goderich. When this storm took place, folklore has it again that people on shore could see lights on these vessels until they finally went out and knew that they were at their demise at that point. So this was an incredible storm. So anybody, if you're looking for little trivia stuff and you're sitting around a table with a group of people having a cocktail and say, look, and I know something you don't know, that in 1913, there was a white hurricane here. That is the White House, which still stands there today. If anybody, I'm sure everybody takes the opportunity to go up there and use that vantage point for some pictures, etc. It's a staple as an entryway to the port. It's a staple as an entryway to the town for sure. Equally as important to mention here today in the success of the Port of Goderich is McDonald Marine. McDonald Marine has been an operator and visible in the Port of Goderich since, I'm going to say, early 1900s. When the shipbuilding business stopped on the, I'll call it the South Pier, Bert McDonald purchased an old building, and from that building he built 2 wooden tugs. Those 2 wooden tugs provided a variety of services throughout the port. Some of those services were obviously for tug support for schooners coming in. There was support for grocery runs for mariners that were on vessels, moving lumber around, etc., etc. So McDonald Marine has been a part of the Port of Goderich for essentially 150 years. And we just made an announcement yesterday that Sue and Ian McAdam, who are the third, I'm going to say third generation operators of that business, will cease their operations December 31st. So, you know, if you see Ian and Sue around, I'm sure most of the town knows them. Let them know thank you very much for your service. We've seen you down there forever. And certainly anybody that has facilitated business down at the port, if you don't know who Ian is, you haven't spent a long time down there. So please, if you do see them, say, hey, look, thanks for everything. Wish you all well on your next journey, next part of your life. So, you know, in the last 18 months, from my position perspective at the Port of Goderich, when the board said, hey, Frank, I think you might be the guy that should take the reins going forward. I'm a commercial guy. I'm an excitable guy. I'm a passionate guy. So I started ringing the bell right away about what we needed at the Port of Goderich, and everything that I attend, I'm ringing this bell saying, hey, look, it's our turn. It's Goderich's turn. And that bell continues to ring today. But I think what's important to know is that some of the partners and industry associations that we are involved in for venues for me to be able to ring that bell are some of these here. So I thought worth noting them today. So Wellington DuPont is a lobbyist firm that we use to give us support to get to the inside of government funding, both provincially and federally. They're doing a good job for us. We're putting some additional pressure on them because of the fact that, you know, again, I'm a commercial guy. I like to see things happen faster than the process will allow. But regardless, putting pressure on them to get some funding for the two active exercises that we have going on at the port right now. Ontario Marine Council, I sit on the executive of that. Great organization on behalf of the marine industry throughout the St. Lawrence Seaway and Great Lakes. Like I said, I sit on the executive of that and was in meetings, stakeholder meetings and the leadership roundtable in Montreal on Monday. Again, ringing the Goderich bell out there. Chamber of Marine Commerce is, we are part of that, and they look after all of the Seaway business. They are facilitated or organized through the St. Lawrence Seaway, and they understand the lock system. They understand transiting from Sept-Îles, which is basically the first port that comes off of the ocean into the St. Lawrence, right up to Thunder Bay. You got Highway H2O as well, which is an advocacy group and an industry partners for all ports, carriers, docks, you know, commodities, the rest of that. Great Lakes Cruising Association, of course, we're continuing to talk with them about ports of call and having Goderich be a port of call, understanding when the right time is for a cruise ship to come in here as a port of call, and the Marine Club. So, you know, I think what's important and what this slide illustrates is that we are out there everywhere. And when I say we, I primarily mean me and the mayor and Janice and you know, friends like Dave and Jessica, everybody else that's out there calling, promoting the word of the Port of Goderich. And these are the associations that we do that through. A little bit of history on the GPMC itself. Town of Goderich purchased the port from the Public Works in '99. The GPMC was formed by the commercial port users in the town. GPMC operates the port as an agent on behalf of the town through an operate, manage, and maintain document. So the two groups essentially got together. The town wanted to be protected on their assets to make sure essentially that the return was suitable. The users wanted some protection to say, hey, look, now that the town owns us, how are we protected against rate increases and the rest of it? And the conclusion of that essentially was the forming of the GPMC to say, hey, look, the GPMC should be the liaison between that, operate through the OMM, which is the operate, manage, and maintain. And that's how that whole collective group is managed and controlled. And the GPMC makes sure, you know, the responsibilities that we have there is port security, port maintenance, managing a commercial ship traffic, infrastructure developments, managing user fees, managing port finances. The GPMC is structured as a not-for-profit corporation. and totally self-funded, like the mayor had mentioned earlier, that all of our improvements and expenses that take place around the port are through annual revenues that come from port user fees, etc. Should go noted that that in 2011, obviously at August 21st, obviously there was a horrendous tornado came through the Port of Goderich, came through Goderich. Unfortunately, there was a one life lost, Norm LaBerge, who was remembered constantly and noted annually on August 21st. Sorry, and that tornado that came through was absolutely devastating. And I don't have to preach to anybody about the Port of Goderich or in the Port of Goderich about how bad that was. But it certainly did make a mess of infrastructure inside of the port, et cetera, et cetera. And we'll move on from there. So I think I want to talk just a little bit about when the Port of Goderich plays in the Seaway game, if you will. And I'll say the Seaway Great Lakes game, again, from Sept-Îles to Thunder Bay. The amount of trade that takes place in this corridor has a greater GDP than a significant number of countries in the world. So, and we are part of that. So what I'm trying to illustrate here in this slide is essentially how far it runs. You know, goes down to Burns Harbor into Lake Michigan, goes to Duluth and Thunder Bay and Lake Superior, comes to Goderich, Sarnia, etc., and Lake Huron, Windsor, Toledo, etc., Lake Ontario, obviously Hamilton, Oshawa, Toronto, Prescott, Picton will be in there, and that works its way east throughout the Seaway. That map there, just for information purposes and to get a bit of scope by the numbers, there's 6.9 trillion of US dollar GDP that was in 2024 that is traded and is generated through that corridor. There's 357,000 jobs supported. There's 798,000 firms participate one way or another combined between Ontario and Quebec. And when I say firms, that's basically somebody getting the benefit out of a cargo, somebody shipping a cargo. It's anybody that's touching any part of a cargo coming in or out through that cargo or through that corridor. The population itself along that corridor is 111 million people. You know, there's 33, 35, 36 million people in Canada. So it's essentially 3 times of that when you take the US population that it goes by through there, 111 million people. 252.1 million metric ton transit the Seaway and Great Lakes corridor annually. There is 157.2 billion of annual cargo value moved. So the value of those tons essentially drives that number, and 66.1 billion of overall economic activity per year. And the reason again that I mention this is that not every port can be a Hamilton, or sorry, a Montreal or a Halifax or a Vancouver, which Vancouver really doesn't have an impact on us. But if I think about the larger ports that are out there, the push that we're putting on funding right now, based on the meeting and long before that I was at Montreal on Monday, is that we need all of these secondary sized ports to be able to relieve the pressure that's coming out of the Montreals and the Halifax and everywhere else. So, you know, Contrecoeur has just been announced to get, I think, about 200 million to facilitate their new port on the opposite side of the river in Montreal. I was with the president of Port of Montreal on Monday, and it's already full. So they know that as soon as that thing's built, they already have to start looking for more space because it's they're at capacity. So when we think about new business for a port like Goderich, that, you know, the light bulbs go off and it's like, hey, look, if they've got cargoes that need to come out of Montreal, and we have product that can go from here to Montreal, that seems like to me, what they call short season or short sea grocery run opportunity. And we should be participating in that. Just for your own purposes, we do about 200 vessels per year out of the Port of Goderich. So even though you see them come in and out maybe not 5 at a time or anything, but when you build that up over the 300 days or so that we operate out of the port, it's significant numbers. And you think about each one of those vessels takes plus or minus 30,000 metric tons, so we're between 5.5 and 6 million tons of cargo a year out of there. That puts us in the top 4 in the province and top 10 across the seaways. So even though it by footprint, it doesn't look that significant. I can tell you that when we introduce these numbers to the people who are thinking about spending money with us, it's significant. So what I'd like to do now is just show you a couple small video clips. The first clip is from the Parliamentary Secretary of Steve McKinnon, the Minister of Transport, just basically sending his regrets.
Hey folks, it's an honor to be bringing you Virtual today on behalf of the Minister of Transport and Government House Leader, Stephen McKinnon. First, let's begin by thanking the Goderich Port Management Corporation, the town of Goderich, and the Huron Chamber of Commerce for organizing this very important event. As you know, Canada is a maritime nation with more coastline than any other country. Here on the Great Lakes, Port of Goderich is a key economic player, driving the movement of goods, supporting regional growth, and reinforcing national supply chains. So as we know, Canada is facing new economic challenges and a rapidly changing world. Reshipping is more crucial now more than ever. It's essential to growing Canada's economy. Our new government is committed to better connecting our economy, diversifying our industries, and increasing access to new markets, and in creating high-paying jobs. We need moderate and resilient port infrastructure of shipping flows. Now, by working together, we can strengthen trade, well, regional economies, and ensure that Canada's supply chains remain globally competitive. Your conversations today are essential. They can help Canada address these challenges and inform new opportunities, and at the same time contribute to the issues our country is most sensitive right now. That is, how can we together build Canada's economy? I want to thank you all for being here today, contributing to these important conversations. The work you're doing, and no mistake about it, is critical to the growth of our economy and to our country. Take care.
So what I think is maybe even equally as important to the video is that through Wellington DuPont, I am having discussions on a far more frequent basis right now with the budget being ready to be approved November 4th, that it's almost on a weekly basis. So the bell ringing and the submissions on National Trade Corridor funding, looking for other buckets of money, both provincially and federally, to get some support to realize, in order to help realize the vision that we have here at Port of Goderich, has ramped up for sure. And you know, I was really hoping, and I'll be transparent in this, I was hoping that we were going to have somebody show up here today with an announcement. Obviously, that is not going to happen now, but my expectation, and I'll put myself out there a little bit, is that we will hear some news before this year's end, after November 4th, on some type of funding to help support the two projects that we have going on. I'm, you know, my glass is typically half full, and I'm an optimistic guy, commercial guy that likes to move things relatively quick. So until they prove me wrong and there isn't a check, I'm going with the hope that something shows up here before the end of the year. So before I play this is an updated promotional video for the Port of Goderich, basically illustrating the assets that we currently have, that we actually currently use. It illustrates, you know, where we are in the town of Goderich, and the fact alone the town of Goderich is the prettiest town in Canada. It illustrates what our go-forward vision is, and we have put this together. It's about 2.5 minutes, and I'd like for you to take a look at it. It was just done by a company in town here a week or so ago. So for those of you that haven't been down to the port for a while and understand what it looks like or what all goes on there, here we go.
Welcome to the Port of Goderich. Located in the heart of Huron County, in the beautiful town of Goderich, the port is the only deep water harbor on the eastern shores of Lake Huron. It is in close proximity to Bruce Nuclear and centrally located to Ontario's grain market. By volume, the Port of Goderich ranks in the top 4 commercial ports in Ontario and among the top 10 across all of Canada. The fort spans more than 100 acres in total footprint, including over 50 acres of hard space ready to serve your commercial needs. It is also home to Compass Minerals, the world's largest salt mine. Longtime partners at the fort include Parrish and Heimbecker, Valley Dust Control, Humlison Group, Canadian Coast Guard Search and Rescue, and a number of commercial fishing vessels. On-site tug services are available, currently offered through Groove Ocean. Looking ahead, the port is expanding with added capacity for project cargo, roll-on shipments, fertilizers, raw materials for cement production, and container handling capacity of over 10,000 TEU per year. Plans also include 50,000 square feet of covered bulk storage, intermodal logistics with vessel, rail, and road connections, and a dedicated cruise ship port call. With full seaway draft throughout the port and shore power available at 6 docks. The Port of Goderich is proud to be a vital hub for trade, commerce, and growth on the Great Lakes. The future of the Port of Goderich has never looked brighter. With ongoing support from provincial and federal programs, we are poised to reach new heights right here in the prettiest town in Canada. Stay tuned for a bold transformation of your fort, including an expanded 11-acre wharf, 50,000 square feet of covered bulk storage, and a significantly expanded cargo menu. As Eastern Lake Huron's gateway for intermodal success, the Port of Goderich is proud to connect domestic and global markets, today and for generations to come.
So that video is available on YouTube. Feel free to share it to whoever you want that may be interested in seeing what's happening at the Port of Goderich at this time and kind of what our vision is for growth. Please do that. Going back to structurally what the Port of Goderich looks like a little bit. Essentially, the Portlands are owned by the town of Goderich. And we talked about the Goderich Port Management Corporation and how it was formed, and that it is a not-for-profit corporation and self-funded through the port users. I'll talk a little bit about what the board looks like for the port. Some of them are here today. So the GPMC has 3 seats from Compass Minerals, as they're our largest key tenant. The chair, as you met Syed earlier on, is one of those 3 seats from Compass. There's 2 seats from the town of Goderich. There's a seat from Parrish Heimbecker, a seat from Dali, and Travis is here from Dali, right? And Larry is here. Anybody, is Daryl here? No? Mark's here. Cool. Town of Goderich is obviously Larry and the mayor. And then 3 seats from Compass is Syed, John, and Shodas. Economic impact provided by the Port of Business, and this is as it currently stands right now. So over 500 million Canadian revenue generated by port users per year. 59 million Canadian of overall impact benefit to the local region. 42 million in provincial tax contributions, which is, in my mind, significant, and even more significant, 70 million in federal tax contributions. There's 2,500 jobs that are created, are supported by the port activity, and that's for all ancillary services. So that is Compass, it's all the employees that work down at the mine. It's the crews that are on the boats. It's the truck drivers that are taking salt out of there. It's the folks that are doing maintenance at the port. So it's a collective number. And that number is about 2,500 jobs. Don't know how good you're going to be able to see this picture, but essentially we have 9 docks at the Port of Goderich right now. And so there is 3 of those docks now that we consider to be winter berthing docks. We increased that up from 1 last year. So what that means is we got additional winter berthing revenue that happens every winter. We've upgraded the number of docks that have shore power. So that is also complements new business to come in, because when vessels come in, they don't want to be working off running off for generators all the time. And shore power is very important to be able to plug into. We've moved our internal tugboat service provided by Group Ocean over to, if you know where the fish and chip restaurant is down at the bottom of the hill, because it essentially just kept it out of the way of everything else that we were doing by Snug Harbor. So that's really what this tries to illustrate here. This picture here is the old Agrodome. And that Agrodome, back in 2011, when the tornado unfortunately came through, took the top of that off. That, since that point, had been used for additional construction wares. You know, if a project got finished, they use it for a bit of a storage facility. One of the realizations as we started to work through space utilization at the Port of Goderich and ensuring that every square foot that we have there is utilized properly until we get additional space, the decision was made between the board to, let's get this thing cleaned up. Let's get this property, let's have the lease reassigned to the GPMC from Compass Minerals and see what we can do in regards to activity out of there. So this year, I think it was August 14th, Aaron, we put a load of sand into there, staged load of sand. It got loaded onto a boat and it went to Detroit. And for a variety of good reasons, it was the same time as the drone flights were taking place, because that video and that activity created a lot of scuttlebutt throughout the Great Lakes about, hey, where was this sand coming from? Where is this sand going to? Who's being displaced in the market? Because now Goderich has sand going to destinations. So everybody kind of got up a bit. But again, when I spoke earlier about, exposure is good, people now know that we have the ability to receive and load bulk aggregates out of that facility, staying away from what our friends at Tomlinson do with their hardstone. So the idea is, from a funding perspective, because we need to cover this building in order to be able to hold salt, be able to hold fertilizer, to be able to hold some bulk materials in the production of cement powder, either at Federal White or at St. Mary's Cement. The next goal, the next project that I see happening at the Port of Goderich will be the covering of that 50,000 square feet. So essentially the way it would work is self-unloaders would come in. There'd be, is there somebody here from Brightline this morning? They were at the thing last night. Anyway, the way it would work, essentially, there's 5 openings at the top of that. Self-unloader comes in. There's a pile underneath for each one of those 5 openings, and we should, depending upon the density of the product, should be able to hold about 30,000 ton in there. Then what happens after that is it gets loaded onto a truck and sent out to whoever the customer is. So we are right now operating that facility without the roof in order to generate revenue to cover a portion of the expense to have it covered. So it stands a bit as its own exercise. That footprint there, if you haven't been aware, that was the last 4.5 acres. That's our last expansion, was 4.5 acres that was completed in 2018. That 4.5 acres is under lease to the Tomlinson Group or Universal Terminals. They have a 10-year term there, and they are utilizing that to plus or minus, we'll say on average, 100,000 tons a year. And I believe this year was the 4th year of 10, and they're also housing some salt from Compass Minerals in there as an additional laydown area. The interesting part about this 4.5 acres, and I'm trying to make this exciting enough so your eyes don't glaze over, but the important aspect about this 4.5 acres is that the original project was to cover 15 acres. At the end of the day, there was only enough money to do 4.5. But the important part of that, and the positive side, is that we have all the approvals in place today to go ahead and do the last 11. We don't have to go through additional EAs, all of our approvals. There might be some timelines that need to be adjusted, etc. And obviously the price of the project of the last 65 has gone through the roof post-COVID. But we have all the approvals in place for us to start that project as soon as we receive the funding And again, going back to a previous note, I'm really hoping that prior to the end of this calendar year, we get there. This is a terrible picture, but I drew it. And really what it illustrates. So I'm not in graphic design, so I'll throw that in. As a matter of fact, I'm not sure I can even handle a ruler and a marker properly. But that essentially is the infill of the 11 acres. And it's far more clearly illustrated on the video than it is in my little doodler here. So that 11 acres will really take us to the next level from a transient cargo business perspective. Some of the challenges that you have is we've got our current book of business with long-standing users, Compass, Parrish and Heimbecker, Dali. So all of these decisions, and John, we talked about this yesterday, that all the decisions on going forward on increased commercial business, there's an upside to it all, but there's also a downside that needs to be managed and controlled. So when you think about now, all of a sudden, we've got the agrodome that's covered, we've got another 11 acres of floor space, there's cargo coming in and out of those facilities, there's gonna be a lot of trucks or a lot of trains because it can't stay there. It either comes to the dock by truck or train and gets dropped off there and then put on a boat, or vice versa, from a boat onto the dock and then out by truck or train. So traffic management down at the port is going to be absolutely critical. So we've started discussions about that. Sean Thomas would tell we've started talking about that because it's interesting that I'm sure any grain operator will attest to that as well, that you put a new bin up and now all of a sudden you need a bigger elevator leg or you need some other type of diversion so that the pinch point changes. Well, every time there's growth anywhere, and you preach to the choir here, obviously there's going to be a pinch point somewhere. So we really the next piece of our growth management will include a traffic management plan, which we have some ideas about and some initial discussions talking to about already. There is, I just want to speak real quickly to, we've started the process of being able to put an information sign kind of over between if you're familiar with the beach washroom and dock number 2. And the idea of that sign, it doesn't sound like a lot, but for us, I think it's very important to be transparent with the community and understand so that they don't have to ask a lot of questions about what's taking place down at the port. So it'll be a visual illustration of a digital sign that basically has a layout of the port, all of the docks that are attached to it, and it'll have information about what vessels are there, what they're loading and where they're going. Now, we need to understand that we're not getting into any proprietary information that's being shared on this board, but certainly, I think it's fair to say that people, when they walk on the beach and they go to the South Pier, their eye naturally goes over to the port, to a vessel that's sitting there. And I think it would go a long way for people to understand, hey, where's this vessel going? Because I'm not sure how many of you are aware that Syed talked about it a little bit, that a significant amount of their salt goes over to the U.S. It all stays from about 3 Rivers south for the most part and up to Thunder Bay. But these lakers or these ocean going, these salties that are coming in, they're going to Ireland, they're going to Norway, they're going to Venice, they're going to England, so it's not just a seaway run business. We are providing services to the world out of there. And I don't think a lot of people grasp that from time to time. And it's part of that whole ringing the bell scenario to say, look, we're just not a local short sea shipper here. People sometimes ask why salties lead there and they still look like they're sitting out of the water. And that's typically because St. Lawrence locks are only a certain size and a certain depth. So in order to have a vessel inside of the Great Lakes Seaway from Montreal down this way, you can't be any deeper in the water than 26.6, or there's a problem. If you're 32 feet, you're not going to move very quick. So, and then what they do is, so they essentially consider that leaving the lock system lighter. They go to Montreal, they go to Trois-Rivières, they go somewhere else, they get topped up, and then they go from there. But I just thought worth noting that we are players in a global supply chain. As always, it's considerations accompanied due to commercial growth. You know, there's the impact on the environment that needs to be considered, either from dust, from truck traffic, et cetera, impact to public access, because we do know that that is something that certainly needs to be managed down at the Port of Goderich. People love to wander around down there with a fishing rod, and I totally understand it. And I'll only say this to that is that it needs to be managed, and they need to exist together, you know, in a safe manner. But commercial operations need to continue. It's good for Grandpa to want to take Joey down there and throw a line in the water, but let's do it a safe and constructive manner. Every one of these expansions that we've talked about, you know, I've heard some different things about, man, sure sounds like a lot of money to be spent here for that and all the rest of it. It goes without saying that there will be an extensive business case study done on each one of these expansions to understand that, first of all, it makes sense, and how do we carry that cash, and how do we carry that cash based on when the return's coming in. So they are no different than anybody else running their businesses. We go through the same exercises here at Ford. And traffic management, for sure. You know, if you kind of put the top 5 or 6 things that we need to look at connected to expansion outside of the actual expansion, it's going to be traffic management for sure. Because everybody comes down North Harbor Road, and everybody goes in either the north gate or the main gate, and depending upon where they're going, they sit there. And in my mind, that traffic needs to be controlled before it gets into the fort. You know, as in a staging lane for salt trucks, staging lane for all other traffic, because once you get in there, you can't leave. You fall about it and rest. So in closing, I'd like to condense all of that has been presented here in the last 45 minutes or so, and reiterate that all go-forward growth decisions of the Port of Goderich will be considered on a case-by-case basis, taking into account collectively what is best for the town, the current port users, and the GPMC, based on where we are and where we want to go. 2026 will be an exciting year for continued growth, project announcements, and starts. And I'll close out by saying that, and thank you very much for having me here today. And please, 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 if you have not heard before, my office is down at the fort. If my truck is there and you have a question or a comment or an observation, anything to do with the port, please come on in and share it, and we'll do our best to get you an answer for it. Thank you very much.